Hey Gadget Groupies, I took a little time with this review using the Priv for about a month. See, BlackBerry is using Android as the OS, which actually presents something of a challenge in reviewing this phone. It's all too easy to just fall into my usual Android habits, installing apps I know work and ignoring what BlackBerry is actually bringing to the table here. Walking around the hardware, we've got a classic smartphone build here, recalling the vertical slider action of old Windows mobile phones. There's a mix of design influences at work. The edges remind me of older Sony phones. The back material reminds me of the Kevlar hand feel from the Droid Razr. The display curves subtly like a Samsung Edge, but stops just short of warping content on screen. It's a mashup which just succeeds at giving off a professional vibe, even though the build is predominantly plastic. The front face features the 5.4-inch Quad HD display, one of them nice contrasty AMOLED affairs. Punchy colors in the high brightness mode competes well against Samsung phones. I find the automatic brightness makes adjustments in really slow and deliberate reactions to changing light though. Controls are software on screen, so our bottom edge can house some great front-facing speakers in the chin. We have a separate video where you can hear those speakers in action. Spoiler alert, they're pretty good. The top of the phone has a terrific earpiece for phone calls, but a rather mediocre 2-megapixel front-facing camera. The left side of the phone is where you'll find the power button, and the right side is home to an audio trio. Volume up and down buttons flank a quick toggle audio mute switch. Anytime sound is coming from your phone, hitting this middle button will silence your phone. As someone who prides themselves on having the quietest possible phone in all social situations, this key comes in handy more often than you might think it would. The bottom of the phone is where we'll find the micro USB port and the 3.5mm headset jack. The top of the phone has pin tool doors for the SIM card and micro SD card expansion slot. The back of the phone holds the greatly improved 18-megapixel camera capable of shooting UHD video. I have the most comprehensive review of that camera available linked in the description of this video. Spoiler, this is the best camera I've ever used on a BlackBerry. This grippy back material is greatly appreciated. It's got a great feel in the hand. It's really easy to hold onto. It occasionally even pulls my pocket inside out. It's got such a great grip. Though for being a matte finish, it does pick up fingerprints more than I would like. Maybe the one hardware flaw here might be how this rear casing flexes. Apply a little force and the back shifts in. It's an uncharacteristic misstep from a company which usually nails these details. And I find myself trying to forgive it, like maybe the way this flexes will make the phone more resilient in a drop? Maybe, but probably not. While the back might have a disappointing give to it, the slider on this phone is fantastic. There's no twisting or pivoting here. It feels like one complete unit, and the only direction this screen will move is vertically. No worries here about jumping a rail or jamming the screen like the old Palm Pre sliders would. A light flick up reveals the Priv's signature feature, a 4-row 35-key hardware keyboard. It's smaller than classic BlackBerry thumb boards, but it's well built with solid, clicky keys and good tactile feedback. Sure, this setup looks really long, but it's expertly balanced, surprisingly comfortable to tap out longer emails and documents. BlackBerry also brings touch sensors from the Passport to the Priv, and the keyboard can be used to slide around the UI and scroll through web pages. It's a terrific consideration, helping you from having to juggle the phone around in your hand to reach between keyboard and screen. In this day and age, I can't say I'm faster on hardware anymore, now that we've spent so much time on really good software keyboards and swiping, but I still enjoy the advantage of a hardware keyboard in preventing half my screen from disappearing just to type. I like this a lot. My screen is dedicated to the content I want to be looking at. Even better, however, is the ability to apply custom shortcuts to almost every key on the keyboard. It's maybe the one feature I miss most from classic BlackBerries. How easy it was to assign a phone number to one key. Flick the keyboard, hold down one button, and the phone starts dialing or an app launches into action. It's radically faster than any other solution I've seen on any other phone. BlackBerry in the past championed battery life. Older phones utilized very low power hardware to maximize runtime. The Priv packs a pretty large 3400 mAh cell, making it the second largest battery in a phone I've tested this year. Daily use has been good, easily lasting me past dinner time most days with excellent standby times. Though I couldn't hypermile it out to 2 days of runtime no matter what I did to reduce battery use. Problem is, this phone could really use a Marshmallow update. Running our video test, streaming 30 minutes of HD video over Wi-Fi at 50% brightness, this phone reported 12% battery loss, making it one of the poorer performers we've seen. I don't think benchmarks always give us an accurate picture of real world performance, but this thing runs hot and drains fast when you do things like update a lot of apps at once. Signal strength has been excellent, consistently outperforming the LG V10 by 2 to 3 decibels on AT&T's network in my area. The phone's been a capable performer with solid call quality and fast data speeds on Wi-Fi and LTE. Even on a road trip through the Southwest, the Priv had no issues finding coverage on Big Blue's network. Headphone audio playback is strong. The Priv drives headphones well, listening through a variety of musical genres, though it's not quite as loud or as punchy as what you might find on an HTC or the new DAC in the LG V10. We have a whole separate video where you can see camera performance in detail, but this is a well-improved shooter over previous Blackberries. The app features a somewhat more iPhone-like layout than I would prefer, with controls flanking a 4x3 native photo frame, and toggles for individual photo, panorama, and video modes. But I think most people will adapt quickly to this style shooter. I'm not a fan of how all settings slide out an additional menu to control the setting. Why move your finger from the HDR button to another button on your composition window when it could just toggle in place? But I really like that we get a sliding control for exposure after the phone locks focus. This camera won't unseat a Lumia or an LG, but it no longer feels as compromised as Blackberry cameras of the past. It's much easier to get really good results out of it, and I enjoyed shooting with it. This whole year, this hardware cycle was plagued by Qualcomm's dog of a high-end processor. The Snapdragon 810 really sucked the wind out of our sails this year, leading a number of manufacturers to embrace the lower-powered Snapdragon 808. So we understand this performance well. It's capable and quick, easily chewing up the UI, but it won't unseat Samsung's Exynos for things like gaming. Qualcomm's next generation of processors is right around the corner, which might concern some, but I'm not overly worried with how the 808 will age, especially as the Nexus 5X is using one, so future updates should support this hardware fairly well. One curious area where performance really lags, though, is in booting up. I'll just let this run up in the corner here while we keep chatting about other things, but I find it odd that when you get to the lock screen, you're only about halfway through the whole startup process. Moving over to software, BlackBerry is in a sticky situation. People are less likely to take risks moving away from iOS or Android, but BlackBerry needs to maintain some kind of brand identity. I read a lot of reviews praising the Priv for sticking with a nearly stock build of Android, but I don't understand how people can claim that when there's a ton of custom software on this device. Almost everything has been tweaked. App Drawer, it's a vertical slider with horizontal panels for widgets and shortcuts. Swipe up from the home button. In addition to Google Now, you also get shortcuts to Blackberry Hub and Blackberry Search. The notification shade has docked message indicators letting you know how many alerts from each app you currently have waiting. Blackberry adds a permanent hub accessible from a side swipe, giving you fast access to calendar, messages, tasks, and your favorite contacts. And in addition to power management options, we also get gestures for waking the device up and putting it to sleep. That really doesn't feel like stock Android to me. Now, Blackberry Hub is a throwback to the classic messaging days of mobile phones, and I'm not sure how I feel about it anymore, having all of my alerts in one place. I kind of feel like we already use our notification tray to get a sense of what's happening on our device, and our phones move between apps fairly efficiently. If the Priv has a software problem, it's that it has so many ways to try and help me organize my messages that messaging starts to feel cluttered. The user can swipe from the side, swipe from the home button, use a shortcut to the hub, hold a hardware button, or pull the stock notification shade to get to messages. The beauty of this is, theoretically, you can customize the Priv to organize messages and alerts in exactly the way that you would want, but people already familiar with Android are likely to have already sorted solutions for a lot of this out, and the Priv runs the danger of annoying users by being too helpful. The hub holds emails and Facebook messages, and while this was helpful back in the day when we only had a few messaging services, today I have to leave the hub often for the insane variety of apps and services that people contact me through now. Like I mentioned at the beginning of this video, I did try to use what BlackBerry brings to the table, but it required a lot of work to get not quite back to where I was simply with stock Google apps. That's kind of my fault for relying heavily on things like Gmail tabs and filters, for example, but it's a kick in the crotch to reorganize that setup in another email client. Even after an update, I'm still getting quite a bit of lag in device search. Performance here just feels inconsistent, where standard Android apps and elements perform well, only to run into a BlackBerry service where you have to wait for the phone to catch back up. The Priv stands for privacy, and BlackBerry touts enhanced security and protections built into this device. It's not running Marshmallow yet, which would enable advanced app permissions, but BlackBerry's custom software should help fill in some of Lollipop's security gaps. Device encryption is turned on by default, and Detect security software will grade you on how well you're protecting your mobile data. A lot of this is pretty basic stuff, like using more secure lock screens, not my weak-ass pattern unlock, but you can peek in on what data apps are requesting. So where does that leave us with the Blackberry Priv? I'm nervous, folks. BlackBerry continues to demonstrate a knack for building out enjoyable hardware. I absolutely love this keyboard, and there's just nothing quite like this phone on the market today. It really is a unique experience there, and in a positive way, a way I very much want to support. There are a lot of software issues to sort out, though, and we only have a vague idea of when a Marshmallow update will arrive. But even with bug fixes and software improvements, there's just a lot of anachronistic stuff I'm not sure Android or iOS audiences will gravitate towards. Older metaphors for how we used to get work done on smartphones. These don't feel like solutions for the problems we currently face with smartphones today. And that's maybe where we have an issue. As the time this video was shot, the Priv is priced at $739.99 off contract on AT&T. It's a bit more difficult to recommend buying one and then not using the software provided. That should be a key selling point of a device in this price tier, not something you should deactivate or work around. Not when it's $40 more expensive than an LG V10 or the same price as a Note 5. BlackBerry has built a great enterprise device for businesses, but they still need a bit more experience with Android to compete with seasoned manufacturers in the consumer space, which, when you think about the history of the company, was exactly the same problem they had when the iPhone first launched. As always, thanks so much for watching. Be sure to subscribe for more reviews like these, and I would not be able to continue producing on this channel if you all weren't out there supporting it by hitting the fan funding, shopping via the links below this video, buying my photography book, or by sharing my videos on your favorite social services like Twitter, Reddit, Facebook, or the Googles Plus, so please keep bringing more cool people to the party. Hit that thumbs up button, and I will catch you all on the next review.